nip tuck. How would I describe it?
I would say envelope pushing.
Unorthodox.
Aggressive.
It's moving.
Racy.
I'm not going to say titillating.
Eerie, chaotic.
Shocking.
It's very hard-hitting.
Haunting.
Emotional.
Salacious.
Dangerous.
It's tender.
Sometimes ridiculous.
This show is really about making choices in your life and the consequences based on those choices. That's certainly not an adjective. If it is, it's a very big one.
All those things. All those things.
Action. I want thrust, and I want blood. I wanted to do a depthy show about superficiality, so that was always my one-line pitch. I wanted to do a show that looked very, very glamorous, and then underneath you would see the rot of everything and just how dastardly and dark and sort of depressing that world is.
People more and more are externalizing their self-hatred, and they have decided that they can fix their interior problems by making external corrections. And there's great folly in that.
The show is not about happy endings. The show's about ambiguous people who are morally corrupt, and you don't have to like everybody.
This show is shameless and unapologetic in the way it portrays human beings and sex and surgeries.
It was a fresh ground for storytelling in terms of plastic surgery. And it really allowed for madness to occur in a way that was plausible.
Getting any form of plastic surgery is a major commitment. It's a major life change. It's not something that you take lightly. And there's a darkness to it. I mean, to go into a room and say, I literally want to change my face, to me is a great example of why people want to explore the reasons why they hate themselves. So that was the jumping off point in all the writing and all the stories we did.
I think many of the scenes in the show are taken from the personal lives of each of the writers. We have writers in their 30s, 40s, one is in her 50s. Some are gay, some are straight, some are married, some are parents, some are soon-to-be parents, and so they bring a whole mix of experiences.
I mean, it has to be rooted in real behavior, which I think that we've done a pretty good job of doing. And I think that's why people like it, because as outrageous as the show is and as in your face as it is, it's also very relatable. I think that the things that the characters go through are very in the canon of what everyday people do. They just are wearing better clothes in the show, I think. That's the difference.
This is a business, Sean, a very good business that is on the verge of setting us up for life.
Well, maybe I don't want to be in this business anymore.
The primary relationship between the two doctors, it's a very unusual love story.
You don't see men being honest with each other and being emotional and being guarded and, you know, screwing each other over, which happens. So I want to do basically a love story between two heterosexual men. And one of the rules of the show has always been Christian and Sean will always choose each other over everybody else. So no matter how bad it gets for these guys, they're always going to be there.
Without each other, in a way, they've got nothing. You know what I mean? And I think that the relationship between the two of them is the most important one that they have. And that's saying a lot, because you got to think he's got a wife with kids. And I think maybe Christian's probably a little more desperately orientated towards a relationship because he doesn't have that foundation to hold on to or fall back on.
What I like about the way we depict these two guys and their relationship is that we never show them having martinis at a bar. We don't see them jogging together, doing all the sort of buddy things that you'll see on most TV shows that are trying very quickly to let you know these two guys are really friendly.
So how's it usually go? Girl meets surgeon, surgeon bangs girl, surgeon has great excuse to leave before dawn. Am I close?
We go to my place, and I give her cab fare.
Oh.
I think a show is only as good as its villain. And Christian is definitely not a villain, but he has, I think, villainous aspects of him. But because Julian's so good in the part, you sort of love him and understand why he's doing despite himself.
Excuse me, but there is a woman camped out who refuses to leave until she gets to talk to that arrogant, oversexed Antichrist.
I wanted a guy who, could pull off wearing the Gucci suits and the Rolexes and the Ferraris, and that's very difficult to do, but Julian is that part, so we lucked out in that regard.
Julian came in and gave complete life and magnetism to the character, and all of those initial concerns about Christian's intrinsic unlikability went away.
None of us get out alive. Now, you can huddle in a group and face it one day at a time, or you can be grateful that when your body rubs against somebody else's, it explodes with enough pleasure to make you forget, even for a minute, that you're only a walking pile of ashes.
Sometimes you think this guy's pretty harsh, it's kind of brutal and whatever else, but there are moments in time where you have to pick to make sure that the audience loves you just for that split second, whatever that may be. Because of all the stuff that's coming out of my mouth, you kind of go, geez, what an asshole.
I'm gonna schmooze with some coups and land us an exclusive contract.
Okay, enough, Christian. Enough with the porn stars and the transsexuals and the non-stop libidinous assault. If on the surface of it, Christian is what a man thinks he'd want to be, then Sean is what you end up with at the end of the day.
Sean was always designed to be the moral one, the most intelligent one, the more talented one, and in many ways, I think the most complex one, because he doesn't express what he feels. Dylan doesn't, show you everything until usually the last reel of his movies. And there was sort of a pain and a nuance and a coldness and a remoteness that I loved about him. But I always had that guy in my head, and I wrote the part for him, and I thought of him in that part. And I wrote challenging material in that pilot, hoping that Dylan would get the part so that he could show everything that he was capable of.
Don't for 1 second feel ashamed about these scars on your chest. You're just wearing on the outside what the rest of us wear on the inside. He's got the wife, the kids, he's got the job he wants, he's got everything he ever wanted. And yet there's some kind of misery right at the center of it that he has to struggle with. Christian also would love a wife. He'd actually like my wife, which is a problem in the show.
So you have the character of Julia McNamara, who basically grew up with these two boys in college and was sort of the woman in between them, and they both were in love with her. I wanted to show these two guys and their friendships and their ups and downs, and I wanted to show the effect of one woman on two men and the secrets and lies that go on with that.
She is passionate, and she is looking for an answer, and she is trying. She's willing to investigate life, love, passions, the other people. She's looking for an answer rather than saying, oh God, life is just too difficult, I can't do it. With Christian and a lot of the women in the series, he can tend to overpower them, whereas I think that when he's with Julia, she's an equal to him.
Julia symbolizes what he, in a way, really wants out of life. He's madly in love with her.
Well, you could say the same thing about Julia and Sean as about Sean and Christian, which is sometimes you got to wonder, why are they together? Maybe they ought to split up. Maybe that would be better for everybody.
With Dylan, the way we ended the season, I felt that she had enormous love for him.
I felt like that's all he wanted for 13 episodes, is for her to come get him wherever he was, and to say that, just look him in the eyes and say, I just want you to come home. I want to be involved in your life, Matt. Deal?
Deal.
Matt has these two men in his life who are, in their own way, heavily influential over different courses of action that he decides to take.
In this circumstance, what's happened is that Sean's the parent side of that, and Christian's the friend side of that.
Without putting too much in it, I do believe I see a little bit of Matt being sort of a moral battleground between those two characters. And I think he could just as easily grow up to become Christian as he could grow up to become Sean.
Rule number 1, it's all about the ladies. Forget who you like and what you like, because you're there to please them. And start chugging your B vitamins, because it's exhausting shit.
Okay. What's rule number 2?
It's all about the ladies.
This kid's lucky, in a way, because he has been given the gift of having somebody who innately just loves him no matter what, and who he can take advice from and hang with and do all of those kind of things that you maybe wish you could do with your father and can't. It's such a vital relationship for both of them, particularly for the Matt character, because he's grown up with this uncle who has shown him that side of life.
Sean is dismayed when he sees Matt much more comfortable and at home and having a much better time when he's hanging out with Christian. And I think it breaks Sean's heart.
If you hadn't gotten pregnant with me, you'd be a doctor today.
I had
I've never regretted having you or Annie. Do you understand that? There's not a degree in the whole world that would make me half as proud.
I see the dynamic between Matt and Julia as its own animal. She's really about the only one that sort of stood up and said, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent, you know, and I'm your parent right now, and this is, as your parent, what I'm gonna do. There are no good guys in Nip Tuck, and that's what I love about it. You have very human characters who make very human and sometimes drastic mistakes, but at the end of the day, in their own twisted, sordid way, they're trying, you know, they're trying, and some to better results than others, you know, and Matt, he falls right in line with that.
All right, sailors, tank goes away.
Hit it.
Well, Roma was always a must-have for me in that part.
She came in and auditioned and had us reeling with laughter.
No matter what's going on, she can have maybe one line in a scene, and that'll be the line that lets you release, it lets you laugh.
You know, when she plays a lesbian anesthesiologist who had an affair with a transsexual, which you don't get every day.
She was designed to be the conscience of the office, this sort of stalwart presence who could not be bribed or manipulated.
Even from the pilot, Ryan had no mention of the fact that Liz is a lesbian. I absolutely love that, because there was a line where she addresses Christian and says something about being a lesbian. And he took that out, because we don't need to label her so quickly. So I thought it was nice. It's like peeling. He's peeling her character. And I don't know what's gay about Liz, other than she happens to be gay. She talks about things bigger than that. She talks about being lonely and being of a certain age and having certain desires and certain disappointments. I think she has a real sense of what's right and what's not right. And I think her learning probably is like, sometimes there's the gray area, which is okay too. And I don't think she really has that quite in perspective, maybe. I think that's something she's learning.
Dr. Troy.
Yes.
Grace Santiago. I'm the new psychologist.
And Valerie was an interesting case. We read her originally for Jolie's part, and she actually went to Studio and Network auditioning for that part, and she was terrific.
She brought such a wonderful quality that even though Jolie ended up being cast as Julia, we thought we needed to make a place for Valerie.
Well, we've actually never even seen the inside of her office. I'm always in their offices. I figure I live in the break room, and then I just come out for scenes.
I find it interesting that Sean has hired her, and yet he has to now deal with her, and she brings an opinion to each issue. And I think Sean's frustration is that, well, he hired her, supposedly to fill a spot there, but now he's got to deal with her, and I think he's being questioned more than he wants to. And it creates a tension in the office, which is great.
Well, the show to me essentially is a show about skin on every level. Skin from plastic surgery, skin from sexuality, and the ways that we expose ourselves. So it needed to be in a climate where there was a lot of skin. And the nominees were very clear. It was like it was LA or it was Miami. And I didn't want to do LA because then you'd get into the starlet of the week. I want to look better for a job. You know, and it's all about my boobs and how bigger they can get. And I just wasn't interested in that Hollywood stuff. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to put celebrity people on the show.
Yeah, I think if you did in Beverly Hills, it's kind of boring. I think you have that high fashion kind of element on South Beach, but you also have the Mrs. Grubmans and the Sophia Lopez's.
The sweatiness, the sex of it, the smell of it, I just think it's affected it. It's like another character.
It's sort of the perfect platform for the world it's presenting. Beautiful people, what does it feel like not to be a beautiful person, what you aspire to.
There are times when you think that the show could be set anywhere because we don't go outside very much in the first season.
And in terms of the looks, I was very specific about a sort of concept called tropical modernism, which was the jumping off point for the look of the show. It's very clean, it's very minimalist, it's very sort of, in that Paul Schrader, American Gigolo, early 1980s style that I grew up with and loved. I wanted to be blood reds and blacks and really crisp whites and navy blues, and no pastels are allowed on the show. Sometimes I'll go to the sets and I'll see one tiny little pink vase and I'll have to pluck it out and, send memos to the staff, but everybody sort of gets it now.
When we were starting to prep the pilot, we'd come up with a term that was chroma noir, that had to do with the approach that Ryan had taken to storytelling, but as opposed to being sort of very dark and moody, we really came up with big splashes of color that were contrasted with very deep, shadowy elements. Those were evident in the script, and we sort of took those leads and ran with them in terms of the production design and in terms of the approach to photography and light. All of those things came out of Ryan, and it was fun to watch him just sort of birth this visually to go hand in hand with how he had come up with this on a paper.
Señorita Amador, dígame qué es lo que no le gusta de sí misma.
Mi nariz.
Tell me what you don't like about yourself.
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 My wings.
That would be my tits.
My ass.
It's my dick.
My tankles.
I should be more patient with my grandkids and,
Darling, no need for the windy analysis. Dr. Troy just wants to make sure that you want a scrotal lift.
One of the biggest signature elements of Nip Tuck are the surgeries.
The odd thing is that, all the cases that we do and all the storylines that we have, we don't make this stuff up. I mean, there's not one medical case on the show that's not based on an actual case that happened. In that pilot, I thought, well, if you're going to show a facelift and don't beat around the bush. What I was told in researching it, and I did speak to doctors, was that if you have a facelift, it's like surviving a car crash at 70 miles an hour and you go through the windshield. That's what the impact is like on your face. And that quickly became the big controversy. It's the thing that got the show a lot of attention at the top, was how graphic that particular operation was. And we brought in Linda Klein, who was sort of supervising the operations, and I kept yelling cut because I kept saying, this is far too violent.
He said, Linda, that's really gory. And I'd go, Ryan, I'm toning it down. And he'd go, wow.
Even though we take dramatic license with the cases sometimes, our medical surgeries are always, really, really accurate, and Linda's great about that.
In the pilot, sometimes when you see hands doing surgery on that extensive surgery, those aren't our hands. Those are Linda Klein's hands. And because that's back when we couldn't really stomach that stuff.
Greer Shepard tells the story of the way we've created the style in the surgery scenes is because the editors, when they were cutting that scene, couldn't watch the surgery. It was so unbelievable to them.
The surgery is meant to be sort of a blank page for the director to make his or her statement. They can choose the filming style, choose the editing style, choose the music. We wanted that to be a constant source of discovery.
Each week, there's a real need to try to do them a little bit differently so that they always grow each week, that's not an element of the show that gets boring. It's not the obligatory surgery. There's some new spin on it. There's some new version of it.
Surgery days are always difficult days because they're long days without too much dialogue usually. And we try to get a lot of footage so that they can cut it in the way that they do. The way that they've been cutting them is almost fashioned individually for that particular episode.
On the set, there's a real impact that those surgeries have on the crew, because there are certain members of the crew who just flat out can't watch the surgeries, can't watch those sequences. And so you can kind of tell how you're doing as a director by the oohs and ahs that you're getting from the crew members.
There's the consultation, and then there's the end result. The middle part is violence. There's no other word for it. It's upsetting, unsettling, disturbing, and we do it. We show it. Sometimes it's a little over the top, but I think at least we put that out there. At least we make it complicated and ambiguous, because that's what it is.
I didn't want it to be a medical show of the week. I wanted it to be a show about, these people come through the doors wanting transformations, and they are the jumping off point to show how our leads transform their lives.
If I wasn't on it, I would be an actor out there really wanting to get on the show, just because I feel like our storylines are so guest actor friendly to the point where they come back for several different episodes.
We brought in a character, Gina, and she was originally written as just one of Christian's many one-night stands.
I love the Bobbitt character. Love him. I think he's awesome.
When there's a towel on a chaise, that means it's spoken for. Up. Jesus.
Kelly Carlson's Kimber. I've also loved that character dynamic. One of my favorite moments was the scene with Mrs. Grubman in her bedroom when Christian strips off down to his wonderful Versace underwear and strides over to her bed and gets into bed thinking he's going to have to take one for the team, so to speak. And she just comes out with this wonderful speech about people and love and life, and it, to me, was one of the most touching moments.
The character of Sophia, the transsexual on a show, was a one-episode pop. But because Jonathan was so good in the role, and we literally got, mailboxes full of fan letters for him.
When the story actually comes to be, it's not for shock value. It's for the humanity of who these people are. And it's putting, unlike people together. I think that's what is attractive about the show.
And the response for the show has been amazing. I mean, I've had people come up and hug me and shake me and rattle me and ask me to give their wives boob jobs and ask me to give themselves tummy. I mean, it's just been, I love your show. And they're like, they mean it when they're looking at you.
It's not a show that you can just kind of walk by and kind of give a nod. It's this kind of show where people want to get it off their chest. They want to tell you, I love your show, I didn't like this, I don't like that this is going on, but I like your show. That's great.
But I'd, be wandering about town in my, regular life, as it were, and people would say, "Oh, why do you give your husband such a hard time?" Or, "Why is Julia so mean to him?" And I was thinking, well, hang on, he's the one who had the affair. Do you know what I mean?
No, usually I'm on a show where they go, "How long's it been on? I didn't see it? Wow, okay."
It's fun for an actor now to think about second season, because first season you're going in blind. Now at least I have 13 episodes of this guy, pretty fleshed out guy. But then the next question was, okay, well now what? Where could these guys go? I mean, how's it going to go?
If season 1 revolved around the love story between these three people, season 2 is about the secret of the paternity will be revealed. And it's sort of not what you expect, and how will these three people and their son deal with the effects of this?
There will be some stories dealing with how Christian deals with parenthood and whether or not his playboy instincts can be repressed or whether they will ultimately take over.
I have a pretty strong feeling and inclination that we're going to get a little more into the sort of sexual education of Matt McNamara and the sort of twisted sordidness that may come with that.
For all the hoops she and the other characters have gone through, I think there's way more ahead.